We are seeing China's assault against the once free citizens of Hong Kong intensify, with authorities hitting back at demands that freedom fighter and media mogul 72-year-old Jimmy Lai be released. Jimmy Lai spoke to 60 Minutes earlier this year.
We have freedom today and democracy because our ancestors has been fighting for it. Many people died for it. Much blood was shed for it. You can't stop just here.
The prospect of spending the rest of your life in jail, perhaps in a Chinese prison, wouldn't exactly thrill you.
Well, I'm not going to think about this. I'm not going to think about things that scares me. I'm staying here. I'm staying here till the end. If we go down together. We burn together. That's my promise to my people.
Well, he is now behind bars. Lai appeared in court on Saturday, handcuffed, chain around his waist and led by police officers. He was denied bail and he's being charged under Hong Kong's strict new national security laws. And now the Hong Kong Department of Justice, doing China's dirty work, has hit out an international community, including human rights activists, the likes of Ayaan Hirsi Ali and US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who have said Lai should be released. Hong Kong's Justice Department has released a statement saying, "We are appalled by such open demands for withdrawal of charge and immediate release of the defendant by senior officials in another jurisdiction." The Justice Department also accused foreign officials of trying to meddle in domestic Chinese affairs. Joining me now to discuss Hong Kong and much more is the greatest business writer in the land, the Herald Sun's Terry McCrann. Terry, what you see happening in Hong Kong? Is there any hope that the international community can exert some pressure and have China abide by the one country, two systems principle?
Well, the short answer to the last question, Rita, is no. They did for a while they felt it was in their interest to do so. But we're now seeing the brutal reality. I guess we were always going to see it at some stage, that because the contract that was entered into in 1998, when China and the United Kingdom just resolved the future of Hong Kong, was that it would ultimately always be part of China. Excuse me, they were going to take a 50-year time frame to get there to 2048. But in 2048, we were going to see exactly this sort of reality that Hong Kong would become part of, and just like the rest of China, which is a dictatorship in which the rule of law does not exist. I guess brutally, what we're seeing is that it's happening on an accelerated time frame. It's happening in 2020 rather than 30 years later. I don't know how the rest of the world can actually face up to it. That's if indeed the rest of the world was prepared to actually unite to face up to it, because we see a lot of reporting about Hong Kong, but we see very precious action on the part of the international community about pushing back against what China is doing in Hong Kong.
And probably we're going to see even less with the Biden administration taking over next year. Trump has been quite strong against China and has talked about Hong Kong a fair bit. But do you expect the Biden administration to continue that work?
I don't quite see how the confrontational relationship between the United States and China is going to further increase the fortune of the Biden family. I mean, Rita, we know that Joe's son
Hunter...
Well,
yes, the big guy needs his 10%, yes.
Well, the son Hunter got rich on the basis of deals with Ukraine and with China. And as you say, the big guy, when he was not in his basement, got 10%. So I really don't see a Biden administration doing anything at all in terms of leading a global counter to what China is doing in Hong Kong. And it's not just Hong Kong, of course, as you need to remind people, it's what it's doing in the rest of China and with the Uyghurs in the far west of China.
And Taiwan. I mean, Taiwan would be getting nervous now.
Well, that's obviously the big question. I mean, Hong Kong's important, but Taiwan is the ultimate goal. I think the whole issue about how China was dealing with Hong Kong was that it wanted to prove to Taiwan that it could come back into the fold and it could have the same freedoms, democracy and rule of law that it currently enjoys. Because, look, we're doing the same thing with Hong Kong. Well, President Xi has decided, forget that. I'm going to obliterate any sense of playing the Hong Kong game as a lure to Taiwan. And that really focuses the question going forward. Do we see a replay of this 1 year, 2 years, 3 years down the track with Taiwan?
Well, just personally, would you feel safe travelling to Hong Kong now with these new security laws in place where you can be arrested, you can be taken to the mainland for anti-political comments you've made?
Well, after this conversation, Rita, which I presume has been redirected to Beijing, I think it's unlikely that I'll be getting on a plane to either Hong Kong, Shanghai or Beijing anytime soon. But then again, I wasn't intending to get on a plane anytime soon to anywhere.
Well, I tell you, I've been to China a couple of times, but never again. I just will not feel safe stepping in there now with everything that we've said and published.
It plays into a bigger question, because not only has China decided that it doesn't need to use Hong Kong as a PR exercise in relation to Taiwan, it's prepared to junk everything that has made Hong Kong successful, which is a combination of financial, it's one of the financial capitals of the world, and it's also a tourism hub. Now, China has clearly decided, well, it doesn't care about those drivers of economic prosperity in Hong Kong, because it's far more important to control Hong Kong. And that, I think, tells you a great deal about the sort of challenges in our relationship with China, because we expect ultimately Beijing to act rationally in its own best interest, that we expect Beijing to think, yes, whether it's wine or barley or iron ore or coal, we actually will act in the way that benefits China. It's a two-way street. It benefits Australia as well. But we actually want these things that Australia can produce. But Hong Kong is telling you that we're not actually dealing with rational actors, that China is prepared to be, if it wants to achieve a political aim, it'll ditch the sort of economic rationality that we normally assume is going to control and overlay what countries do in relation to each other.
Well, it makes those negotiations very, very difficult indeed.